with Echo, it's just incredible. So I'm really excited for this matchup here.
Most definitely, Spire's Ascension has been one of the most volatile dungeons, one of the most challenging dungeons, with this fortified, raging affix coming at these teams. It's going to be Echo and Perplexed for our first game in our finals here in Spires.
Yeah, Nagura, looking at this series of dungeons that we have for these two teams to go through, this is going to be a huge uphill battle for Perplexed. The first two dungeons, Spires of Ascension and Halls of Atonement, are dungeons that Perplexed just hasn't been able to put together cleanly. 11 deaths in both of the previous runs in these two dungeons, so they are going to have to be lights out, in addition to having to be more clean than Echo, and it's going to have to start with this first pull. Both teams now gearing up for this first pull here. Everything is now stacked on top of each other, and the damage is going to come out quickly from both teams.
Yeah, and and Cass actually going through here by the Goliath. Looks like maybe that was even intended, because this was not raging yet. And once there's raging, you definitely want to make sure you have all of the interrupts left available to you, because you don't want to get any of those Castigator casts off. You don't want to get any of those Goliath casts off. So maybe they knew they can let one of the casts go through, so they don't have to waste an interrupt before they're in raging range. And you also saw the perfect usage of that Silent Sigil and the Dragon's Breath to delay those casts as long as possible. As both of the teams are now done with this, but looks like Perplex was slightly faster.
Yep, just a little bit faster, and that, again, playing a little bit better than they did with Obey Alliance here as well. But again, it's all going to come down to how they're able to execute on those big pulls, and they had lots of issues literally like an hour ago. So hopefully they just play better here. And one of the biggest disadvantages of playing in this lower bracket is there's been no practice time for Perplexed. They've been on broadcast for the past 2 hours, right? So they don't have time to go back and touch up on their Spires of Ascension strat. They had to go play PI me in the other two dungeons. So while they've been sitting here playing, Echo's been able to practice and refine their strat. So again, it's just a really tough way for Perplexed to progress through the bracket. And they've looked okay doing it, but Echo just, I feel like, has a massive advantage here.
I definitely agree. It looks like both of the teams proccing that Pride at the same time. Both of them also have this Goliath left to deal with. Now, depending on which team can actually pull this Pride onto the boss faster, the more time they will probably gain. So we'll keep an eye on that when they decide to move onto the boss. We know that Perplexed is not actually committing the Bloodlust for this one. We'll see what Echo is doing, because we haven't seen Echo play this dungeon, this cup yet. In fact, we haven't seen Echo play any of those 3 dungeons in this series on the tournament. So they might have some surprising strategies for us here, as they are committing their Bloodlust on their side. So Echo seems like they don't need the Bloodlust for that later pull that Perplex is committing their Bloodlust for. So they're going to be saving a lot of time on this boss because of that Bloodlust commitment.
Yeah, both teams opting to go for the similar strat here of waiting for their 2-minute cooldowns and their True Shot and their Zuin and Weapons of Order from the Monk to come up. And once that happens, they pull the Prideful on top of the boss, cleave it down on 3 targets with that effective cleave, and end up burning through it. But again, Echo committing the Bloodlust here to burn the boss down faster. And it's really, I mean, it's not that big of an advantage that they're getting from the Bloodlust here, right? Only 10 to 15% HP on the boss based off of the burst damage both teams are doing. And really what it comes down to is whether or not they're going to be able to efficiently deal with that massive AoE pull a little bit later on that we know Perplexed likes to save the Bloodlust for, just to make it go smoothly. If Echo's able to pull the same pull off without Bloodlust with 0 deaths, it could give them quite a huge advantage here.
Yeah, I agree. We're going to have to see what Echo is doing here, as they're probably going to be gathering up all of these Stealth Claws. We see the sigils being thrown out by now. Now, these Stealth Claws, if you actually don't hit them before they hit you, then you get stunned. And you don't want that to happen. That's why he was throwing these sigils. And sometimes we even see the Hunters pull them with Turtle for the tanks. And they all gathered them up in this corner to make sure the Praetor is also on top of this. And that beautiful Binding Shot as well coming out of Fragments here on the Hunter. Now, once they are raging, there's no way now can tank them anymore. That's why you see him start kiting. Divine Field as well dropping incredibly low on the side of Perplex as well. Definitely don't want to have any of those hitting the tank anymore in the raging. That's why we also see the Ring of Peace come out of Swagfist as well. But you want to keep them stacked as much as possible still to be able to get all that cleave damage out.
Yeah, and again, like look at how much cleaner Echo is being right now with this trash. I do like, however, what Perplexed is doing, using their CC, using the Ring of Frost to make sure they keep things stacked up for, you know, a little bit of extra time. Of course, it gets instantly broken by any sort of AoE cleave damage from anyone in the group, but just a little bit of stops to make sure they stay in those tar traps a little bit longer, make sure they stay in those slow fields a little bit longer, just makes the pull go that much more efficiently from the team. But everything is going to come down to this. This is one of those major pain point pulls for the teams in this dungeon, and Echo is going for the entire platform pull here without the Bloodlust. And if they're able to pull this off without the Bloodlust, it's going to be a huge time save for them. But look at how clean and efficient they are to even get the Dark Praetors down in the AoE. And with only one Goliath left, man, Echo just so clean here, even getting it done better than Perplexed without the Bloodlust.
That was actually so clean. Like, it looked so easy when they did it, but look at Perplexed. Perplexed committed their Bloodlust, and look how it looks. They have the Pride spawned, they have 2 Goliaths still up, they have a Praetor on full HP because they didn't manage to gather it up with the rest of the trash pack. So Echo just doing the same pull, but just so much cleaner, somehow managed to get those Praetors perfectly on top of the rest of the trash while gathering everything up. And this is really what makes or breaks these kind of pulls. The gathering of the pull itself, because once they're stacked, it's easy to throw your CC on them, to throw your AoE stuns, to throw your binding shots, to use your AoE cleave. But to be able to gather them up so perfectly is what usually is creating problems for these teams. And as you can see, Perplexed still having that Praetor alive, causing huge problems for them, as the Pride mob is just AoEing them down. And now they still have to finish off the Praetor, just losing precious seconds here and there because of not being able to set it up perfectly. While Echo, on the other hand, perfect execution, and now they're gathering up their next pull on the second platform.
And you have to wonder as if what's happening here to Perplexed has to be some sort of mental fatigue, right? Because they've been playing pretty much nonstop in a stressful competitive environment for the past 2.5 hours now. And, you know, that weighs on you at some point. Yeah, you're just playing a video game, but it puts you through a lot of stress. It really sends you through the ropes here. And, you know, I wonder if that's just another factor here. In addition to Spires of Ascension just not being one of their cleaner dungeons, they really aren't able to pull it together here, unfortunately. And Echo has opened up probably a solid 30 to 40 second lead, and it just keeps getting worse for Perplexed as Divine Field procs his last resort and instantly goes down, causing 3 more DPS deaths on their way. And it looks like Ryzen as well is going to be going down here, not trying to use that Shadow Mill to skip this trash. It's going to be a full team wipe for Perplexed. 25 seconds more on the board for them, in addition to having to run back, which is a large time loss in this dungeon, because you have to actually go through every single one of those angel timings. And man, it's just not looking great for them here. Looks like they also pulled an Inquisitor here. Was that the Inquisitor that they skipped before the first boss, I think? Man, really unfortunate for them here.
Yeah, definitely. Echo, on the other hand,
it's snapping to them. The trash is snapping to them.
Oh, okay, so that's really bad. In fact, it might not actually be that bad because they can finish it off, right? So it didn't heal to full HP. They're going to have to finish off the Goliath here by itself. But more and more trash is snapping to them, as you can see. Another mob just coming down there to Perplexed. Just issues over issues. Well, Echo, on the other hand, is dealing with the squad leader now. They actually played the Pride a little bit differently, I believe, what we've seen other teams do before. I'm pretty certain we've seen teams proc to 60% Pride on the previous platform and then use the invisibility potion to skip it. While Echo, on the other hand, did not proc their Pride previously. They went up to 59%. Then they dealt with the squad leader by itself, proc the Pride. Now they're cleaving down the Praetor and the champion with the Pride, and then they have the buff for the boss. So this is actually a very interesting difference in strategy here.
Yeah, the strategy that we see from other teams where they just kind of like will pull trash mobs out of the way and then end up pretty much pulling every non-squad leader on top of the boss. Yeah, it's a little inefficient, but the big thing is that they lose probably like half of the, well, they don't even have the prideful buff, right, because they skip it. So this is going to be really efficient for Echo. Not only will they still get all of this non-squad leader trash on top of the boss, but they have the 30% damage buff from prideful as well to help them cleave it down. And this boss is just going to completely melt here for them.
Yeah, definitely. They have all of those buffs available to them. You also see them pull the Ether Diver and the Inquisitor on top of Ventunax as well. They do have a Soothe, of course, on Fragments here on the Hunter if they need to, but it's just melting. They don't even have to use that ability at all. Fragments can just do pure damage to this boss as he's just melting. Perplexed did manage to get back to that platform in the meantime, but they're now up to 5 deaths, so 25 seconds on the board. And, I mean, they caught up a little bit, right? So they're on 62% trash. They dealt with this Pride. But yeah, just very unfortunate for them to have this almost full team wipe and this full reset on that pool, while Echo having no issues whatsoever.
Yep, Echo just trucking on, and it's good. It's great to see from them because they were a team that in the first cup, if you remember properly, they had some big issues in this dungeon, even, you know, in the grand finals against Perplexed in Cup 1, where they just kind of ended up throwing the dungeon over to Perplexed, and Perplexed played cleanly here. So this is a complete flip of that from our first cup of the season. Echo just completely getting as clean as possible, and Perplexed just really coming up short, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, there definitely are still pulls in this dungeon left that are incredibly dangerous, that can theoretically put Echo behind if they don't pull it off perfectly. For example, this next pull here on this platform, we see most of the teams just pull the Healy and the mini boss plus 2 more trash packs on top of each other, use a Kyrian Spear, and just nuke it all down. But if you miss a little bit of damage and this spear is not enough, then they're all in raging range and it could cause them to have a team wipe because of the huge amount of damage coming out of that trash. So we'll see if they can pull it off perfectly. And then, of course, the most dangerous pull in the whole dungeon is going to be that triple angel pull at the very end. So let's see how Echo is going to be doing these pulls.
Yep, that angel pull is going to be the make or break point. We saw both Obey and Alliance just chain feeding deaths to it. And I don't think that's these teams being bad at all. That just points to how difficult the nature of Fortified and Raging together is. We keep bringing it up in this dungeon, but that's because of how dangerous it is, right? It's so scary for the teams to deal with. These mobs, once they have that 100% damage buff from the Raging on top of the 30% from Fortified, that's 260% increased damage if they don't dispel or soothe that Raging buff. But look at this pull that Echo is putting together here. Yet again, the double pull, sorry, a triple pull, 10 mobs on top of each other. And I don't believe they have the Kyrian Spear, do they? No, it just now goes out. They have the Kyrian Spear available. Everything is stunned for 8 seconds, I believe, taking increased damage. In the cooldown window, everything is getting bursted down, and there might be a couple casts going off, but they have the AoE CC to deal with that.
Yeah, the healing immediately got soothed by Fragments as well to get rid of that raging effect. Incredibly well executed again. And we saw how they set up the pull here. Again, the whole setup at the start is the most crucial part, because once everything is gathered, you throw the spear and everything is fine. But if you don't manage to gather everything, then things can fall apart very easily. That's why we saw Fragments use that camo to go through and make sure he's pulling the correct mobs on top of Nao, while Nao is using that Silence Sigil to get the rest of the trash packs on top that are the casters and that don't just walk on top of you. So really well set up and very well done by Echo as they're dealing with this 80% Pride here. We've seen some teams skip this Pride and then pull it later on to have that Pride buff for the Angel pull, but most teams changed the strategy up and just said, you know what, we don't need the Pride for the Angel pull, or at least we're gonna risk it and not have the Pride buff for the Angel pull, because this boss, Orifrion, it's actually gonna save them a lot of time if they can one-phase this. If they can face it within one draining phase, it's actually a huge time gain, and that's why most of the teams changed the strategy to do the more riskier thing and just use the Pride for this instead of the Angels.
Yeah, and I think that's what the advantage of pulling the boss solo rather than pulling the usurpers on top of it is that you don't have to worry about cleaving any of your extra damage on the usurpers. You just get to focus it all on the boss to get it lower for that damage amp phase, right? When we watched Obey Alliance and Perplexed play off in this dungeon earlier, Perplexed was able to just kill the boss in the damage amp, which was a huge time save, whereas Obey Alliance still had 10% or so left on the boss. And yeah, they did get the cleave from the usurpers, but then they had to single target the boss for another 10%, so it wasn't as efficient for them. I really like the strategy of just making sure you get the boss as low as possible here before this first damage amp, because it actually also allows you to get into that damage amp phase while it's an execute too. So you activate the kill shot from the hunter, and you also get it below 30% for the mage to start hitting that scourge execute phase as well. Just lots of extra damage coming out when you hit that execute here.
Yeah, definitely. And there we go, the draining phase does start. And we're gonna see the combustion and the cooldowns come out of the damage dealers here. Everything being used, even the PI from Zelia as well, to be able to just nuke down this boss while Nao is soaking the orbs, while also damaging the boss as well. Just standing in melee range, making sure he's soaking it all up. And there we go, Orifrion going down. not even close to draining
No
to full
shot.
energy too. That was actually incredibly quick. Now they only have to gather up this last trash bag here to get up to that percentage that they need, to 85%. And then we're going to be seeing that angel pull.
I believe they need both usurpers, right? I'm pretty sure you need to get to 87%. And you can see it looks like they're actually pulling both of them here. Right now is off on the other side, pulling the second pack. So so everyone's going to be line of sighting to make sure they don't get hit by any hurl cast. They have the Ring of Frost pre-placed to get as much stacked up as possible. Unfortunately, they're not quite line of sighting everything, but they have the grip sigil from the DK to get everything stacked up. And once that grip sigil is down and everyone's in melee range, the hurls will stop going off. And that's the major danger of this pull. Completely just gone past here. Great execution from them to make sure that they're getting everything stacked up. That pull is a lot scarier than it looks. That was pretty much as good execution as you can get from Echo.
Yeah, this can be incredibly dangerous because it's also raging as well. Once all of those are raging, if they're not tanked and some of those hurl casts actually go off on players, then it can almost be a one-shot even. So incredibly dangerous. And then, of course, we also have explosive, which is something we haven't mentioned before. But when they do those huge pulls and you see all of those explosives spawn all over the place, that's the healer's job, right? Salia is just making sure he's killing all of those explosives before they go off, while also keeping everyone alive. So good job by the healers dealing with that affix here as well. And now we're going to have to keep an eye on Echo, see if they can pull this angel pull off. So they're going to be pulling all 3 of those angels. They have the Bloodlust available. They have all offensive cooldowns available as well. They're actually waiting for the true shot for Fragrance, it looks like, as it's just now came back up. And they're just waiting to get everything back because they know they're a little bit ahead. But if they wipe here, then that's going to cost them a lot of time. So they have the time to wait here to get all of their last restored up again as well, I guess, because it looks like now might be waiting for the cheat death a little, just to have it as safe as possible.
Yeah, that has to be what they're waiting on, right? Because this is we saw how terrible this was. Terribly this went for both teams earlier on. And this is really interesting thing here. They're committing literally all of their cooldowns right off the bat, including the Carrion Spirit. But that means they're going to be stacking that debuff even more now. There's going to be no like relief phase for Xaylia here. He's just going to have to heal through these increasing stacks more and more. But look at that, they're all below 10 stacks as everything enters the raising phase, so the burst damage here isn't going to be that high. Echo is just blitzing this down with everything now dropping below 20%, and this is, I think, the cleanest we've seen any team do this week. This is crazy good from Echo, and we keep wondering, how is this team going to deal with this trash pack? It looks like Echo's just going to deal with it by burning it down literally faster than anybody else here. It's insane. And now it looks like he's not even going to proc the last resort here as everything drops below 5%. Everything goes down. They don't even need to use the touch of death. Man, that was insane. Echo are just on another level, man.
Yeah, now they're gonna use the invisibility potion to just skip this pride here. And one thing I saw as well was Fragrance immediately soothing off the enrage of Klotos, the one angel that casts the AoE stacking debuff on everyone, and then immediately on cooldown also just soothing off the enrage of the other bosses as well. And then we saw a staggered use of Shadow Melt, because if you're out of combat, you actually drop the stacks of those angels. So we saw Fragrance use the Feign Death first to completely just get rid of those stacks, and then using the Shadow Melt by Gingy Salia as well to just get rid of those stacks as soon as they were at a certain amount of stacks. So really well done, but very well, good use of utility here to just make sure this is quite a bit safer. And now we see Salia just throwing those achievement spears on top of the boss to make this boss go a little bit faster too. Oh, it was too late actually.
You didn't get in the bubble. Unfortunate.
It's actually it's actually kind of close, right? Because you have to immediately jump down after the AoE, otherwise you won't make it back into the bubble. And Sally was just being a little bit too late.
But you know what? The funny thing is, even though they used a death and a battle res there, it's probably still a time save, because there's really no other way for your healer to do 4% of the boss's HP, like over the course of the entire fight. But yeah, it's pretty crazy fast. So again, we talked about this a little earlier when we saw Spires of Ascension earlier today, but there is currently a bug with this final boss in Spires of Ascension where I believe the way it's procced is if you use the intermission spears after the first intermission phase, right? The meta achievement spears, the boss will just keep spawning orbs outside of the phase. And then you can use that to skip the second
whenever you throw a
intermission,
spear,
just do
it
full boss
spawns
damage.
one set of orbs. Yeah.
Oh, is that what it is? But yeah, the fact of the matter is it's a bug that the teams are aware of, right? Yeah, the fact of the matter is a bug, all of the teams are aware of it, and they're allowed to use it, because it would be kind of weird for one team to get it and one team to not use it. So they all know about it. They're all allowed to use it. It just makes this boss go by much quicker. And you can see how much faster it is having access to all the spears here. The boss now dropping below 15% for Echo, as Perplexed is still dealing with that final pride that they were unable to skip. And it's just going to be a clean first map win for Echo here with only one death.
He pulled the pride. He
pulled the pride. It's not going to matter. The boss is dead. But
he said toxic.
Still very clean run, man.
No need. Just do it for a little bit of style points, you know. They got it down on lockdown. Echo taking that victory in Spires of Ascension, and probably one of the cleanest ones we've seen yet here, Tettles. That was actually insane how it was efficient that they were on killing those angels near the end.
Yeah, I mean, the angels at the end are of course, a very dangerous part of the dungeon. Honestly, I thought that the biggest highlight for me was definitely the very beginning, whenever they were able to do that trash pack after the first boss without Bloodlust. They somehow miraculously got the Praetor grouped up like perfectly, and they didn't need like Prideful. They didn't need Bloodlust. Like in previous weeks, we've seen both Prideful and Bloodlust be used on that trash pack. Echo proves that you can do that without either, and they're able to do the whole entire platform at once, and honestly, just a great job from them.
Most definitely. And, you know, Echo having that time to prepare, having that time to be able to get ready, and not really sweating over any of just the one death that they had on Dazalea there, Naguro. Just smooth sailing the entire way, while Perplexed just kind of having more of the like mortal struggles that we've seen all the teams this week have at some point in Spires of Ascension.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting to see as well, because we haven't seen them play this dungeon yet. And as you mentioned, so many other teams struggled with this last pull specifically because of the Raging and the Fortified combination, without actually having that Pride buff that we saw them have before when they went for this strategy. But all of the teams switching up the strategy to make the last pull riskier without the Pride buff. And because of that, so many teams just failing to even complete that pull. And it's such a huge time loss if you don't pull it off. Thankfully, Echo saw that they have a little bit of time, because Perplexed had this little bit of a wipe. So they could actually wait for their cooldowns to come back up to make the pull a little bit safer. If it was closer, it actually could have been more difficult for them as well if they didn't have those cooldowns up. But yeah, still incredibly well executed by Echo.
Hey, Jack, I have a question. What do you think about Frag's effective HPS being 56 for that whole entire dungeon?
Just 100 things, man. Just 100 things.
Just
Does that mean you didn't
man.
even exil a single time that entire dungeon?
Exactly.
I don't know.
or health pots, or...
I guess it's just, I wonder if it's some like potency conduit or something like that, or endurance conduit that gives him like a tiny...
leech.
Yeah, leech.
Oh my goodness. Oh, typical hunters, man, I tell you. Besides that,
maybe he healed his pet a little.
Yeah, actually.
True, yeah.
Probably it.
Maybe it's him just healing his pet and literally nothing else. Oh, man, I tell you, these hunters, man. But besides, highlighting Frag's, of course, lack of healing whatsoever, Tettles, what else did you want to highlight for us?
Oh, yes. So I did want to actually bring up the difference in the pulls. Like, I talked about it a second ago, but Echo able to do this pull without that Bloodlust it's honestly just spectacular that they were able to even get this completely done without Bloodlust. It's very dangerous pull to be able to deal with, and so they are able to get down those Goliaths really well. Unfortunately, on the side of Perplexed, they're doing this. This pull is so scary, and they have that Skirmisher parried off to the side. But unfortunately, you see Divine's cheat kind of proccing there. Then some more issues start to happen. And then you do see him die. And basically once he dies, to the Raging Ether Divers, everything else is just completely out of sorts. That is what is effectively the end of the run for Perplexed. And they lose the Spires of Ascension off the back of Echo having a perfect run. And Perplexed just unfortunately has one wipe that it's irrecoverable.
Well, I mean, that's just and really the historical trend in a lot of respects, Zyro, with Echo, is that you can't have any sort of wipes or any sort of mistakes when you're playing against them. And so far this weekend, we've seen Echo be that team of old that we were really expecting, being just kind of one step ahead of everybody. That, Perplex, they got to be able to find some way to break this, or they're going to lose this finals.
Yeah, I mean, there's one thing that's always rung true with Echo is if you do ever actually beat them at something by just straight up playing better than them, you can be sure that that's probably never going to happen again. They're going to steal your strat if it was better than theirs, and they're just going to do it better than yours. And I think we're seeing that completely come to fruition here in Cup 3. Yeah, they looked very vulnerable in Cup 1. They were still kind of trying to put it together in Cup 2, but in Cup 3 it looks like they put it all together. They're on top of the meta. They have the HPAL comps, and looking at the map pool here, we're going into Halls of Atonement, which is a fantastic Holy Paladin dungeon, and we know that they like running the comp. We know that they've practiced it. And if they're able to pull it off here and play it well, I unfortunately think that Perplexed just has no shot here. And it doesn't really help that Perplexed played this dungeon earlier today and had an 11 death run in it.
That's right. I mean, it doesn't speak well to the confidence for that, but when it comes to compositional forces, really, Tettles, we've seen how PIB really went on a very early tear throughout this tournament, leveraging Holy Paladin, Shadow Priest, everything like that. We know that Echo has been preparing that. Halls of Atonement is a huge hill for them to climb.
Yeah, Halls of Atonement, the biggest deal for this dungeon, it's one of the most... It feels very linear for MDI style teams, at least in terms of like what you have to do. There's not a lot of like weird skips that you have to employ, and everything is like almost... I don't want to say linear. Linear is the wrong word. Everything's so spread out that you don't have to employ like invisibility potion skips, or, like shadow meld skips all that often, except for whenever you're making your way to Echelon. So that really allows the just kind of brute force strategy that the Holy Paladin brings to be shown off in a really, really strong way. That on top of the fact that Halls of Atonement it's mostly just like a damage check. It feels like one of those dungeons that a lot of the teams employ very similar strategies, and there's not like a lot of unique stuff that you can do there. So the biggest thing is just like who's doing the most damage, who's able to group up the mobs the fastest, and who's able to get everything down, which the Venthyr Holy Paladin provides an absolutely astronomical amount of gain via that.
That's right, as we're going to be seeing that Paladin on display, I'm sure here. Game number 2 getting underway. Echo up 1 versus Perplexed.
All right, so we do not see the Paladin comp from Perplexed, but we do see it from Echo. We know that they can play this comp because they actually practiced this on their stream, so we know that they can play this Paladin comp. Now, one thing to mention though, even though we know that the Paladin comp is probably better, but in this dungeon, we've seen Echo make huge mistakes. Even twice, I think. I think they had two times where they had huge team wipes in this dungeon here. So whenever that does happen, it doesn't matter what comp you play, the other team is going to win if you make those kind of mistakes, right? So they still need to play this cleanly, even if they have the advantage from having that extra damage from the Holy Paladin. But it looks like the first pull went really well for them, as they're already done with that Pride and the Trash as well. Looks like Perplexed got done with the Trash as well, but the Pride mob is still alive, so everything just done a little bit slower for Perplexed. All right, so I guess
you know what? I'm muted, perpetually cough button over here. It's just so stupid looking at the damage meters there. Zaylee is up at like 30k DPS competing with the DPS in the group, and then you look over Perplexed and you see Rice, and you know, it's a little 2k DPS just vibing down there. But the crazy thing about the HPAL damage is it's all prio damage, right? Aside from the Ashen Hallow pumping out the AoE, which is not a huge portion of it, but the Paladin's just spamming out those Hammers of Wrath and the Ashen Hallow and the Wings cooldown, and he's probably really a lot of the damage that goes onto the shards, and then of course on the Pride afterwards once everything's dead. So much priority damage, and you can see where it's paying off for them. Already onto their second Pride with it now entering 50%, whereas Perplex is only now just spawning theirs. Already the HPAL just blowing them ahead here, giving them probably a solid 20-second lead.
Yeah, and it looks incredibly clean as well as they're dealing with this Pride. Now, one thing to note as well about the affixes is that we do have Tyrannical Raging and Necrotic. Necrotic, something that can be dangerous. We're gonna have to keep an eye on that, how they are using their Kirin vials as well to get rid of those stacks. But the Raging is actually really important here, because those gargoyles that can be mind controlled by the Venthyr affix, they actually benefit from the raging. So if you can get them into the raging affix first, and then you use the mind control after, then you actually get a lot of increased damage. So that's what we see some of these teams do. They just pull the gargoyles on top of the trash, they nuke them down, AoE them down with the rest, and then when the Pride spawns or when they pull the boss, they have the raging gargoyles to get Gingy going down actually for Echo here on their side. They have to use a battle rest to get him back up. As this shard here is raging, they have to deal with it really quickly before the next Thrash cast is coming out.
Oh, it's just now coming out. They might take 1 or 2 ticks from this. No, they kill it right before the first tick would go out. That was a little bit of a scary moment there. Now instantly popped up to like 30 necrotic stacks, had to get out of dodge and start kiting around. And there were still lots of mobs available, still 5 or 6 of the trash pack up there. So they really had to be careful there. Looks like Gingy probably took like a swipe to the face or something and went down. So it's a little bit unfortunate. But the good thing about that death, even though it's 5 seconds on the board, they're still at the beginning of the instance. So he can really easily just invis back, release and invis back, and still get here in time for the Pride. And even if he wasn't there, they had the loyal Stoneborn there just to help them out with the damage reduction and the damage it brings as well. So not too big of a loss. But while we're talking here, Echo and Perplexed have kind of evened up here because of the death, because of the kiting that they had to go through. Perplexed has been able to make up some of that ground, and they're both starting to gather up this massive pull onto Helkius with only a very slight time advantage for Echo here. But check it out, we're at the 4-minute mark. Any second now, we know that Ashen Hollow and Wings combo is going to be coming out from Zalian. We'll see him shoot up the meters in a little bit here.
This is actually an insane pull both of these teams are pulling off here. As they pull multiple packs on top of the boss, while also having these Stoneborns as well. The loyal Stoneborns just being nuked into raging range. Now both of them are raging for Perplexed. Now they're going to be mind controlled by a Shine. Divine Field dropping incredibly low as Echo is doing the exact same thing. But you look how much lower Helkias is for Echo because of that extra damage that we're going to be seeing Stalia doing. There we go, Ashen Hollow being placed by Stalia as those 2 enraged Stoneborns are just hitting the boss.
Hey, by the way, we are now a minute into this pull, and Zalia's damage numbers are going up because of how strong that combined cooldown is. Just pumping out those hammers, getting above the tank in terms of damage here. And I mean, again, look at the side-by-side comparison of the healer damage here. Zalia sitting around a nice solid 10k DPS, while the priest over on Perplexed side Ryzen is struggling to keep around that 2.53k mark. Just a huge difference. And the great thing about the cooldowns from Zalia here is they last so long with the extensions that they run and the legendaries that they run, and just the base duration of the Ashen Hollow, that it also just extends into this Manifestation of Pride, and he's able to do a little bit more damage here too.
And one more thing I just realized, I mean, we keep comparing the healers, but Maris on the Shadow Priest pulling 20k DPS on that boss pull, while the Windwalker on Perplexed side, Swagfist, only got up to like 12, 13k. So also a difference in damage from Shadow Priest versus Windwalker as well on some of these pulls. As Echo is now just walking through this area, they're going to be shadow melting off the aggro, and I assume Celia just used that invisibility potion to get past. There we go. So not incumbent with any of those previous trash packs. Perplexed now doing the exact same thing, just a little bit later, but it's not that big of a difference. And we do have the 5 seconds on the board for Echo because of that death.
Yeah, and the great thing about Shadow Priest is that even though it doesn't have the insane burst potential of like a Fire Mage or an Unholy DK, they have very consistent damage, right? They spec into Searing Nightmare, they spam those Mind Seers out, and it lets them do pretty significant AoE damage whenever it's available. And, you know, yeah, they don't do as much peak damage, but they do consistent damage, which really helps them over the course of the entire dungeon, right? It makes them viable to run as an alternative to the Disc Priest, which is why we're seeing this Holy Paladin comp just kind of become more prevalent, you know, in addition to the ridiculous damage that the Holy Paladin can do.
Yeah, definitely. And now we can see who has more single target damage for this boss, as Echelon is dropping pretty low for Echo already. Of course, they pulled the boss a little bit earlier. I would say 10 seconds earlier, maybe a little bit less. So we see the difference in damage. Now, of course, it also depends on offensive cooldowns whenever they're going to be available for one group compared to the other. But I think most of the offensive damage cooldowns are going to be very similar because the pulls are very similar for both of those teams as well. I don't think there's going to be any major differences on where they're using their offensives, especially the combustion. With both of the priests being Night Fae, both of them are reducing the combustion CD, of course, for Gingy and for Wolf Disco.
Yep, exactly. Now, credit to Perplexed where it's due, right? They are playing lights out in this dungeon and are somehow keeping it within, like, probably, I look at the boss percentage here, they're keeping it within that 5% boss damage range, so they're doing a great job of keeping it close. But I think the biggest thing to keep an eye on here is going to be these final two bosses, where Xaylia is going to have both Ashen Hollow and Wings available for both of them to pump out that single target damage. I don't really see how Perplexed is going to be able to keep up. I think a lot of whether or not Perplexed is going to be able to take this dungeon comes down to whether or not Echo is able to pull off this particular pull right here, going for a very large double pull into the third boss of this dungeon. We've seen a lot of teams have issues with this. There's a lot of residual AoE damage that goes out. And I mean, it's all going to come down to this, whether or not they're able to pull this off.
Yeah, and one thing to note, I think almost all the teams so far immediately mind-controlled these Stoneborn loyals. They didn't wait for Raging because it's just too dangerous. But if a team can actually pull this off and just nuke the Stoneborns down, and it looks like Echo is doing it. It looks like the loyal Stoneborns are not actually being mind-controlled here by Xaylia. They're just nuking them down into Raging range, so they have the single target damage from them onto the boss. And that's actually going to be such a huge time save. Perplexed doing the same thing.
Yeah, that's scary. Like, it's so insanely dangerous to do that pull without the Stoneborn, right? The Stoneborn, not only is it a huge damage boost to help you deal with the trash pack quicker, but it's also a 10% damage reduction on your group. So being able to just throw caution to the wind, AoE the pull down, and get the Stoneborn into Raging range is just such a ridiculous amount of control and danger going in. You can see Divine Field dropping incredibly low while tanking that Stoneborn. They still haven't gotten it into Raging range yet, which is really confusing, right? You need to get that into Raging range so you can actually get it mind controlled and do damage. You can see Echo, they just got their second Stoneborn, so they're doing a much better job of controlling the Stoneborn and doing more boss damage with it, and it's just pulled them so far ahead here. Almost a 30% damage increase on the boss for them.
Yeah, definitely. You can see how low the boss is already for Echo. Perplexed now also pulling that second Stoneborn on top to get it into that Raging range as well. But yeah, we'll see what Echo is doing, because it looks like the boss is going to be dead when that Stoneborn is in Raging range. Are they going to be pulling it over to that mini boss later? I'm not really sure if that's even a possibility. Yeah, but if that's possible, then that will help them out a lot.
Yeah, I guess you don't lose too much, right? I guess what you end up losing is the Stoneborn running to the mini boss, right? Because you have to mind control, I believe, before going through the gate, otherwise it won't run with you. I'm not quite exactly sure how that works. I don't think I've seen somebody try to run through the portal with a Stoneborn still alive.
Me neither. Maybe it comes with you.
But it looks like, I think they're going to be mind controlling it. Xaylia has mind controlled it before going through the portal. It will stay with them, and it'll help carry the damage on Inquisitor's Cigar here. Of course, the main thing here is that once it heals once by draining the souls with this Dark Communion cast, you can then burst it down before the second Dark Communion cast. So you don't have to deal with any of the ads other than the ones that it transforms here. So they're going to be bursting that down with the Combust from Genji, which is a very low cooldown, and on top of that, the Loyal Stoneborn damage, which you can't actually see on the damage meter, unfortunately, because it was mind controlled in combat. So yeah, I assure you that Loyal Stoneborn's doing a lot of damage here.
Yeah, definitely. Perplexed doing the same thing with their Loyal Stoneborn as well, but everything just a little bit too late. I mean, Echo is just playing this so cleanly. They're both playing the same strategy, but Echo just having the advantage from playing the Holy Paladin and the Shadow Priest, just being able to execute everything a little bit quicker with the help of that Ashen Hollow. Not sure if Xaylia actually has it available, not sure if we actually had used it previously on the previous boss, but we are going to have to see as they now engage Lord Chamberlain as well, with the Pride still alive even. So just look at the time, we're 11 minutes into this dungeon and they're already fighting the last boss. This is just incredibly fast.
I would imagine he did use it, right? Because it wouldn't have made sense for him to pop the wings solo there. As you can see, he just used it. It just ran out. So yeah, I imagine he doesn't have it available for this. I mean, he would have popped it with the wings here and bursted the boss damage. Yeah. But they're just so far ahead here. They don't even need the paladin damage, right? They already have the boss at 70%, whereas Perplexed hasn't even started whittling down that prideful debuff yet. And yeah, it's just gonna be all she wrote. Echo, even through all of the meta changes, these guys are just on another level with how they play the game. They are so clean.
Yeah, it's actually incredible how they're dealing with all of this. And I mean, they had this one single death which barely cost them anything, immediately got the rest back up. It wasn't Gingy at that pull. And I mean, yeah, just 12 minutes into this dungeon, this might even be a sub 13-minute hauls. I don't think we've ever seen such a fast hauls before. So yeah, just so fast to adapt to the meta, so fast to adapting to their strategies, even with streaming everything as well. They're streaming their practice now, so they're open to other teams just, copying their strats. They don't care. They say, you know what, you can copy our strats. We're still going to do it faster than you. And there we go. Echo just getting lower and lower on that boss. as they're about to win this final in Cup 3.
Dude, Echo already has Lord Chamberlain down below 10%, and yet another super clean dungeon with just that one troll death with Lord Chamberlain below 5%. They are going to be taking Cup number 3 against Perplexed, their utter rivals, and securing themselves a lead in our points standings.
There it is, Echo taking the victory in some extremely speedy fashion. That wasn't even like 13 minutes there, Tettles. Absolute dominance in this finals. They've secured that number 1 seed so far, as we have one more Cup weekend before we have our globals, but incredibly impressive here by Echo.
Yeah, I mean, it absolutely looked spectacular. You know, the funny thing is Perplexed was actually neck and neck with Echo all the way through Echelon, and the Perplexed, I felt like they just started to fall off super hard on that third boss. They had a Houndmaster that just wasn't stacked up perfectly, and that took a little bit longer to be able to kill. And it felt like their stacked cleave was a little bit lower, even though like Zalia didn't end up dropping that Ashen Hollow until after all the trash ended up dying. It was kind of like a weird timing on like when he was dropping that Ashen. But as you can see, 3k higher DPS across the whole entire run from the side of Echo over the side of Perplexed. Very similar in routing, and it just comes down to the fact that like if you are going to be doing 3k more DPS just via the healer, it's just unfortunately not going to work out for you. Also something to really point out too. Look at Mirez, yeah, exactly. 10k